Hey tankers, and welcome back to World of Tanks with PR154. Today checking out some gameplay of Carro 45T. That is the reward tier 10 Italian medium tank, only available through the Clan Wars campaign. Now today we are piloted by General Hans Krebs of the Vicious Hawks clan, or at least he was Vicious Hawks clan at the time. But what we've got here is a vehicle that is significantly more capable than its tech tree cousin, the Progetto 65. The DPM is a little bit higher, the penetration stats are a little bit lower, but you're hitting for 400 instead of 360. That's due to the upgrading of the Calibre to 120mm over 105mm. Still have the 4-shot auto reloader. Rate of fire is identical, but Progetto 65 can dump that magazine a little bit faster with a 2.5 second intra-clip reload. The lighter Calibre also has superior aim time and gun handling. It's also a little bit fast, about 10 kilometers per hour faster than Carro 45T, with slightly higher power to weight ratio, pretty well identical terrain resistance characteristics, and a little bit nimble on its turret and tank traverse. View ranges are identical, while Progetto 65 retains slightly higher concealment values. The quantum leap in capability, however, comes from its armor profile. You have significantly better armor on Carro 45T, and that is what's allowing General Hans Krebs here to be playing hull down with the brawling heavies rather than having to fight out in the field as a flanking medium, which is more akin to what you'd have to do with Progetto 65. Now, although there is a cupola weak spot of 155mm, you still have a minimum facing of 275mm on the turret, possibly 230 with the weak spot under the gun trending into the turret ring. Played from the full 9 degrees hull down, the upper frontal plate also gets a minimum of 360mm, which becomes very bouncy in its own right, much less with 360mm of penetration. Now, as this fight's developed, we can see that General Hans Krebs' team has committed quite heavily to the northern pass, and while this Kranwagen that the General was facing off against was actually in a pretty good position to start off with, it has been forced to fall back as T110E4 and others have advanced, and that's put a rather nasty hit into the Kranwagen. General Hans Krebs follows up, dumping its magazine into Object 268, leaving in a very vulnerable hit point position. T110E4 now going for the advance, still a bit cautious about that Kranwagen, but rounding the corner anyway and shutting down Object 268. Now it has started taking fire from Kranwagen, but continues the low push regardless, as does most of the team. In fact, at this point in time, it's only General Hans Krebs that is pushing high to counter the Kranwagen, which has now dumped its magazine. Jagdpanzer E100 is among the vehicles that are pushing the low end, and it turns to blast the enemy ST2 to Kingdom Come. General Hans Krebs had dived into his magazine quite a bit there in order to engage the Object 268 earlier. The Kranwagen had also been on the reload, but turns out Kranwagen was not alone around this corner. We've encountered an AMX-50B as well as a 121B. More on that later. Batchation 155-58 has locked onto the enemy artillery piece and, sending a shell downrange, manages to deprive the enemy team of landing further indirect fires. General Hans Krebs is now joined by the Kranwagen, which pushes around on the enemy Kranwagen, sending it back to the garage, but it's reinforced by AMX-50B and 121B, who are now both getting to town on Kranwagen. Doesn't have many hit points left in the tank there. General Hans Krebs pushes forward, shuts down the 50B, but the 121B manages to knock out the friendly Kranwagen. The enemy has sent a solitary 60 TP up to the hill, but it's managed to bottle up both a WZ1115A and a 114 SP2. The sole Batchation 25T is not doing a hell of a lot on the hill at this point in time, so it decides, alright, well let's free up those two other tier 10 tanks. Goes around the long way around, busting through the wall. Now this is a little bit of a risky maneuver. It is a bit exposed at this point in time, but they're into the rear end of 60 TP, who was all alone. So now that's 3 tier 10 tanks on this team that are free to influence the outcome. The enemy Batchat 25T also having a bit of a roving commission here, knocking out the friendly Batchat 155-58 artillery piece. So now neither side has artillery. And although the friendly team are pushing the enemy back, they are making them pay for every inch, with Jagdpanzer E100 shutting down the friendly STB1 on the corner. But here's the thing about when enemy vehicles fire, they are no longer a threat, so that's a really good opportunity to push forward and try to cause some damage to them. Unfortunately, pushing forward, becoming a little bit log jammed here, but T110E4 moves forward, knocks out the enemy T110E4, Jagdpanzer E100 back in the fight, and really continues to make the enemy pay for every bit of ground they take. They're sort of backed down right into that little creek there. They're really out of sight. So it's just the enemy UDES 1516 playing hull down off the opposite side of the bridge that's maintained the forward defense, but there are still quite a number of guns lined up behind it. as they're zeroing in on T110E4, knocking it out of the game. 114 SP2 taking the high ground, and they've been able to knock out the Jagdpanzer E100 as it's just dropped back into the river. The team is now advancing across the bridge, led by Jagdpanzer E100 and Object 705A with a crushing ram into Object 1516. It's not going down without a fight, however, but it's managing to escape Jagdpanzer E100, getting around the side of it and knocking it out. Object 705A thinking, why aren't you dead yet? So it decides to turn its turret and blows it to Kingdom Come as well. 705A is now side-scraping off the side of this building. One of the best side-scrapers in the game, it must be said. There's an enemy 114 SP2 over the other side there, so it's just trying to angle to take advantage there, and there it is, there with the kill. And okay, General Hans Krebs is back in the fight. So what the hell's he been doing for the last minute and a half? Let's wind this back and find out. So when last we left them, he was engaged in a bit of a contest here with the enemy 121B. He dived deep into the magazine. He's actually taken a bit of a hit here, but fortunately he's joined in this position by a friendly Object 140, so hopefully they're going to be in a position to 2 versus 1 this enemy medium tank. Now fortunately they dealt with both the AMX-50B and the Kranwagen earlier in the game, really presented those mag-fed heavy tanks from having an influence on the battle, allowing the enemy push to really run through. So it's just 121B here that they've been able to stall out, but it's Object 140 that ends up taking the kill. But we're not completely clear on this flank yet. There still remains a small matter of the Batchatillon 25T that had knocked out the SPG earlier, and General Hans Krebs manages to find it, hitting it, ramming it, and it's now tailed up by Object 140 as well. So we've got a bit of a Benny Hill moment here as we attempt to chase down the Tier 10 French auto-loading medium tank. Of course, General Hans Krebs is into the depths of his magazine, so as such, the DPM is really suffering, and it looks like in this particular instance, the Batchat 25T is going to slip from their grasp. And thus, we somewhat return to where we left off before, where General Hans Krebs decided to avoid the enemy second line and bear down on that rather ill-fated 114 SP2 that will be knocked out by the Object 705A. In the meantime, the enemy Batchatillon 25T has made its appearance again from the top of the hill, but it is knocked out by 114 SP2, providing the final rounding error. They've been spotted in turn by the enemy 114 SP2 that sends it back to the garage, and an enemy STB1 assisting from the back line is moving to engage, but is shut down in turn by Batchat 25T. General Hans Krebs in the meantime has been taking a more circuitous but certainly a safer route through the enemy backline. He spotted the flank of the enemy 114 SP2, knocking it out for their second kill of the game, but Grille 15 is on the ball, knocking out the friendly Batchat 25T as it attempts to make its advance from the high ground. Now it is the only enemy vehicle left in the game. Scores are 14-8, so it's certainly not the tightest game, but hardly a walkover either. So there's certainly, with the 15cm main gun on Grille 15, a lot of potential to turn this score to something more like 15-9, possibly even 15-10. Of course, as we said before, the best way to ensure survival of your vehicle is to reduce enemy hit points to 0, and 750 hit points of Alpha will certainly do that. They will have their work cut out for them with General Hans Krebs, however, because throughout this entire battle, they have only taken one hit from the enemy 121B, so they have kept their reserve of hit points all the way through to the end of the fight. And this is something that a lot of players struggle with, myself in particular. I'm mostly no exception here, where we try to have early influence on the game, early damage, early kills, but unfortunately that does often mean we're trading on hit points early. But we're at the end of the line here for enemy Grille 15, and General Hans Krebs is able to find it. It's fluffed his first shot though, it's sent it into the dirt, but he's just face hugging it now. We are not making any mistakes. The second shot lands true. We're allowing each of these shots to come into the magazine. We want to put as much as possible into it. We're out of ammunition. We've gone for the ram, but no, there's 5 hit points remaining, and it's Object 140 that ends up seizing the final kill. So a little bit of a disappointing finish there for the general, but hey, a win's a win. And how? Let's take a look at the results. So that is an Ace Mastery badge in the Tier 10 Reward Italian Medium Tank Carro 45T. And this places General Hans Krebs in the top 1% of tankers for that week in Carro 45T. Of course, quite a difficult feat to achieve because it's generally people that are in top clans that are in a position to actually get this vehicle in the first place. So you can generally assume that you're the top 1% of some very talented people. They've also picked up the High Calibre medal for accounting for at least 20% of the total hit point pool of the enemy team. In this case, nearly 6,100 hit points of damage inflicted on the enemy. He's also picked up the Bruiser medal for causing damage to enemy modules or crew members at least 5 times in the course of the battle. And of course picking up the Fire for Effect medal, which very rarely get the High Calibre medal without getting the Fire for Effect medal. Having a look to the team scores, have gotten 40 to 50% higher than the next taker, who was in the Object 705A. The friendly Kranwagen also doing quite well despite an early exit for the game, but certainly having a fantastic impact on the fight with over 3,900 hit points of damage inflicted on the enemy team. Speaking of the enemy team, points there to Full Boss in the Jagdpanzer E100, nearly 4,200 hit points of damage inflicted on the team and 2 kills. So really making an impact, and they were closely followed up by the UDES 1516 that was leading a very stalwart defense of the bridge as General Hans Krebs' team had pushed through. But I guess at the end of the day there was just some overwhelming force there by General Hans Krebs' team, and the enemy team's defense was not able to press its strength of numbers where it needed to. There are a few too many vehicles playing defensively where they should have been pressing their advantage. Having a look to the detailed report, we did make a small profit here, but that is largely thanks to a battle payments clan reserve that was in effect. Otherwise this would have been a 15,000 credit loss, largely in part to having to lean on the premium ammunition a fair bit there. But I mean, I guess you can see why. 320 millimeters of penetration as opposed to 248 millimeters with the standard AP. If you are going to lean on the standard AP, then you really want to be picking your targets carefully. But still, that is a small price to pay for Ace Mastery and a result like this. So very well done to General Hans Krebs of the Vicious Hawks clan, or the Lime clan, depending on which point in time you are referring. So that's it from me, tankers. Do swing by our other platforms. We are on Facebook, we're on Twitter, of course we're on YouTube. You're catching this on YouTube. We're also on Twitch. We have a stream twice a week, and on our Saturday stream we'll take on the best community submitted replays that have been submitted to our Discord. Please check that all out at the links below, and we'll showcase them on the channel with live commentary. And if you're around, we'll even get you on the channel to get you to talk us through what was going on through your mind and down your barrel. In the meantime, happy tanking and take care out there.